Whitetail Advantage Podcast with your host, Brett Bovin. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Dan.
Tuesday night.
You know what I freaking hate the most?
What?
Poison freaking ivy, man.
You don't have it now, do you?
It's like it's never going away. I got one little piece of it a couple weeks ago.
Where?
In the beginning of March on like my forearm. And then next thing I know, it's going away and it pops up somewhere else. It's going away, it popped up somewhere else. Now I kind of have like a little patch right here, patch on my elbow, and it's finally going away down my wrist. Now somehow it's back in my freaking knee.
Oh, it's getting close to the family jewels. That's where it's going to end up.
It was literally on both sides of my inner thighs.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck,
it's
man?
creeping. That's what happens. I have the same impact. Like when I get poison ivy, I can't seem to kick it. Like I haven't really ever had any really bad outbreaks, like huge rashes.
Yeah.
But the same thing. I'll have a small little area that I think I have contained, and it'll start to clear, and then I'll find it in another spot. And usually when I have poison ivy, I have it for an entire summer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then when it gets bad, like when it gets on my face, I usually have to get steroids.
Well, I used to use, well, I still use it. It's called Technu, but now I went and switched this. I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but it's called Zenfel or Zenfall, whatever. It's just this little tube, and you just put like a little, you just put an inch. All you need is an inch of it, and you rub it for 30. You get that place all wet. You rub it down for 3 minutes, and then it clears it up, takes away the itch away within like 30 seconds. And you could see the drastic change within just 24 hours.
Okay.
And I do it excessively, though, only because I can't stand poison ivy. So I'll do it more. And next thing I know, it itches because it's just so dried out.
Yeah, like you might
get
have
that
like
rash.
a chemical burn.
Yeah. But do you ever get paranoid of like you have like an itch, but there's like no sign of it? It's like, oh, I don't want to touch it.
Because I know I have poison ivy. Yeah. Yeah, I have all that, man. And like once I already have the rash, I haven't found a topical treatment that works for me. Besides like prescription hydrocortisone cream, but that Technu, I use that a lot. And the way that I use it, like whenever I'm in the woods and I know that I may have been exposed to it, as soon as I get home, I lather all my skin with Technu.
You lube yourself up with it?
Anything that was not covered when I was in the woods.
Yeah.
So like my face, my hands, my legs, I rub it all in and then I let it like dry. I do that about 10 minutes before my shower.
Oh, okay.
And Technu works really well at preventing the outbreak before the blister appears.
Now, they come out with a spray though, right?
Technu?
Yeah.
That I'm not sure.
Because I remember doing it once, and I couldn't remember if you do it before or after you get
Technu is advertised as a pre, intra, and post. Like you can use it in any way, but it never works good for me once I have it. But it works really well at preventing it because it'll kill those oils before they cause the skin irritation.
Yeah.
Once I have that, I'm a lost cause, bro. Like it just takes over and it creeps.
Yeah, I just can't. And I'm texting the guest right now.
But yeah, man, that's pretty early.
Well, it's because I don't know.
We did have a warm up, so
yeah,
that makes sense.
And there was one time in it was sophomore, junior year of high school. We're playing. It's summertime. I'm getting ready for a football season to start. I got a little patch of it on my thigh. And I thought my dad said, Take your scrubber and get deep in there
Oh
and
my
make sure to
god.
clean it out." And next thing I know, the next day I wake up, my whole leg is just
Yeah.
covered in poison ivy. I had to go to the doctors, and I asked my dad, like, "Dad, what happened?" He said, Did you rub around it like I told you?" It's like, "No, I thought you said to scrub in it." He said, "No, I told you don't scrub in it and stay away from it." I'm like, "Oh," he goes, "Yeah, you're a dumbass, and now that's what you get." And it's the middle of football season. It's July, 80 degrees, and we got pants, football pants.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man.
I tell you the other one that I've got before, when fishing, uh,
Yeah.
chiggers. Have you ever had chiggers?
I've heard about those I've heard they suck.
Dude, I swore it was poison ivy because I've had it a million times, and it was kind of following that same pattern where it was hopping around to
Yeah.
different body parts, and then it started climbing up my legs towards the family jewels. So I went to the doctor and I was like, "Hey, I got poison ivy. I need medication." And she was like, "That's chiggers." And I was like, "What the hell is chiggers?" She was like,
Oh,
"Oh,
man.
it's just bugs that burrow in your skin." I was like, "What?" I was like, "We have those in Michigan?" She was like, "Yeah, usually like wetland, like swampy areas,
Uh,
stuff like that. You can get them." And
oh,
that was pretty brutal. I would say chiggers are worse than poison ivy.
yeah, nope. Don't give me that.
Yeah.
Well,
The joys of being an outdoorsman.
exactly. Well, if this is your first time listening, I'm your host, Brett Bovin, along with my other host, Dan Asher. Dan, say hi to everybody.
Hello.
We virtually travel state to state talking to other guests. And this week we are in the state of Illinois. And when I noticed that we were scheduling Illinois, I was like, wait a second. There's somebody that I know that is in Illinois. And I was like, oh, wait, it took me a second. I was like, oh, Jake. Messaged him right away. I was like, oh, man, we got to get him on the show. If you've seen his stuff on Instagram, this dude knows how to freaking put down the hammer on some big deer down there.
Yeah,
And as far as I know, I can see him in the
picture.
virtual waiting room. Shake your head if you can hear me of saying, where,
Yeah.
oh, and there was a question I was going to go with that. Now I forgot. Dan, you want to you pop him
Yeah.
in.
Let's just pop him in so we can talk. Hey, Jake, how you doing?
Good, guys. How are you? Thanks for having me on. It's
Oh, absolutely.
humbling. It's pretty cool, actually.
You ever been on a podcast?
Yeah, this is my second one, third time, but second different podcast. There's a local guy down here who's got called the Blue Tail Bow Hunters Podcast. A bunch of cops, same type of deal, all
Okay.
about deer hunting and stuff like that. So,
Hell yeah. So how's your Illinois hunting been as of late?
Wait,
Because
that's
you
me.
lived up here in Michigan, right, for a while?
yeah, so I'm born and raised in Michigan. I moved down here in 2016, and I was down here for 2 years and then moved back to Michigan for like almost 2 years. That's actually how I met Brett at County.
And I recognize you too. I worked there as well.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. It was brief. I remember I'd see you a couple times and then I stopped seeing you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, I mean, long story short, I was there. Everything was good. And then a bunch of family stuff happened. We wound up having to move back down here for my wife's family. So, which it was all good.
Yeah.
Just a family deal. We had to make the change. So, but yeah, hunting down here it's good. We'll put it that way. It's good.
Yeah. Probably a little better than Michigan, huh?
Slightly, like a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I assumed.
Yeah.
Well, Jake, besides that little bio, can you give us a little bio about yourself, though? More of a little broader one.
Yeah, sure. So I'm 37. I'm married. I got 2 kids, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. So hashtag dad life, trying to balance everything. I'm looking at getting back into law enforcement. I'm currently a contractor, have my own construction business, furniture making business. Let's see, hunt as much as I can, as much as possible, which is limited time now. But I grew up in Michigan, was there forever, and just like every other Michigan guy, like hunting, that's what we did. You hunt, you fish, you do everything outdoors, trapped, all that good stuff. Let's see, I got into bow hunting when I was probably 11 or 12. Because I moved up with my mom and my stepdad, and all of my stepdad's friends bow hunted. My dad only gun hunted. And I remember watching, my stepdad and all his friends get together, September, start shooting their bows and everything, drinking beer and hanging out. And I'm like, what are they doing? So, of course, being a young, impressionable child, I had to get into it and just absolutely was enamored with it right off the bat. And so much so that I started shooting competition, and I've continued to shoot competitively off and on. Not as much anymore, just because time constraints, but. I've shot in the IBO World Championship. I've shot ASA. I've shot 3D. I've shot JOAD. I've shot NAA, field archery, been nationally ranked, won state championship. I don't know, lots of stuff. And then I was fortunate enough to work for Shootback Sporting Goods there in Jackson for, I don't know, probably almost 10 years off and on, part-time, full-time. So my knowledge and my archery wisdom just skyrocketed. And I was really fortunate, extremely fortunate to be part of that crew when I was. I got to test all sorts of products and field test broadheads. I mean, there was I think a 3 or 4 year span where my buddy Sean and I had 4 different broadheads in our quiver, because I run a 4-arrow quiver, and we would go out and just stack animals, just shoot does. I mean, we would eat them and use the meat and treat them just like every other deer, but we would take pictures of the entrance holes and the blood trails and everything. That's how we, told customers about X broadhead or X arrows and whatever. And I got fortunate enough to shoot for Hoyt for a little while doing that. Helped design some other stuff. One of the coolest things I did is, Lone Wolf, obviously they're Novix now, but when they came out with their flip top seat on their climbing platform, so I made the very first prototypes of those, and Brian Shupeck, he was the designer of that, and he took them to Lone Wolf like the weekend after I made them, and then it won like best tree stand innovative and blah blah blah, a whole bunch of awards at ATA show, and I was part of that. That was pretty cool.
Wow.
So just extremely blessed to have been part of that crew.
We actually just had Troy Pottinger on here, and he's one of those Lone Wolf guys. Yeah, that's
awesome. Yeah, so I'm almost 9 years in the Marine Corps. Did some deployments, law enforcement for a few years, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. So venturing deep into the oldest, most ancient, mature buck killing you can possibly get. And it is you might as well just start over, put it that way. It's a different ride, but it's the most enjoyable so far. So
you're mainly a public hunter though, right?
No, not as much anymore. I'm probably 50-50 anymore. Back before I had kids and was married, I hammered public because I had more time.
Yeah.
But now, my time is limited. I'm very fortunate to have a wife that she's extremely understanding and very supportive of it. But I do still feel a little bit of guilt when I leave her at home. Like last year, I think I hunted 42 days total, or 42 sits rather, not excluding my week-long September hunt. But she's very supportive. So, I do still bang around on public. But I also have access to 2 leases that are really good, that are just friends of mine that allow me to go there. And then I own basically 13 acres of my own. So I hunt behind the house sometimes too. So I bounce around. Pretty much I guess my style would be I hunt mature bucks in their core areas. And I know a number of places on the public that's south of me, where those areas are. So if the conditions privy that I go to that area, then I'll go to that area. If they're different or more beneficial to go to like one of the leases, I'll go there, or maybe behind my house, I'll go there. So I definitely let the conditions, all that kind of pick where I go.
That makes sense. Yeah, Shupex is a place that I have not been to yet, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. And actually, my bow guy that I have my bow serviced, he used to work at Shupex for a while, and now
What's his name?
Tom Irwin.
He was my best man at my wedding. I lived with him for 3 years.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a small world. Yeah. So
Yeah.
One of my buddies, one of my other hunting mentors, he's been taking his bow to Tom for years when he worked at Shoe Packs and then now. So he kind of hooked me up with him. It's a little bit of a drive, but I like him.
Yeah.
And
he's very, very, very knowledgeable about what he does. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good shit. That's the guy I've been telling you about, Bovin.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's just way more inconvenient for you because you're 30 minutes for me and he's way east, but it's worth it for a good bow guy.
Yeah. So when I was shooting for Hoyt, there was I'm trying to think. It was the year 2015. I was living with Tom, and for whatever reason, that was the year that Hoyt came out with the Nitrum, and I was the Hoyt guy at Shoe Packs there for the longest time because I'm just a big Hoyt fan. So I was the one that pushed Hoyt and sold those, and Tom was the Bowtech guy. And I was given a Nitrum 34, and Tom was given whatever the Bowtech was at that year, and he and I kind of started the Shoe Pack like long range. Let's see how far we can push these things. And dude, we would spend copious cases of Bush Light and hours after work standing out in the yards. You know, we'd start dropping dimes at 80 yards, and then we're like, okay, can we get to 90? Okay, can we get to a hundo? Okay, well, how far can we really get out there? All of a sudden, you know, we're 115 yards dropping pie plate sized dimes and being able to come back to the customers and being like, this is what a properly tuned bow can do for you with good form, all the correct equipment, all the good stuff. I mean, I could tell you, God, countless of stories that would probably get me arrested with me and Tom. So.
Yeah, I like the atmosphere out there. He's always got his kids.
Yep.
He's always smoking some meat.
Oh yeah.
He takes his time and he focuses like on, because I'm pretty naive to bow hunting. Like I just completed my second season, so I'm new to it, and I liked that Tom like really worked on like proper technique and form. He wasn't trying to just sell me shit. He was trying to teach me how to shoot my bow properly. So
yeah,
that first impression is why he'll continue to get my business.
That was our biggest thing there, and it still is to this day. I do the same thing that he's got going on down here. I've got my own shop and my own bow shop, and just not to the level that he's at. I'm trying to get there. I haven't devoted as much time to it because I got other stuff going on. But yeah, that's our biggest thing. And honestly, in my opinion, coming from the hunting world and the tournament side, is, you know, one of the reasons I like archery so much. This is how I theorize it. Is, you know, if you go buy a race car, and Brett, you go buy a race car, and I buy a race car, we're all in, say we're in stock class, right? But you can buy a $40,000 motor, and Brett, you buy a $70,000 motor, but I can only afford a $20,000 motor. I can be the best driver in the world, but I simply can't compete because I'm not fast enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can take, like, all three of us can go spend, say it's $5,000 and buy, and I know this is subjective, but the absolute best piece of equipment, everything you can possibly imagine, and we all three have the same pieces of equipment in archery. Well, it truly comes down to who's the better shooter. You can't outbuy the next class. You can't outbuy the competition. That's what I like about it so much. So one of the fundamentals we would teach is, you know, become the best shooter you can first, and here's how you do that. And you can learn to outshoot your equipment, and then you go ahead and start making upgrades and really getting into the more high performance, specialized tuning aspects of it. But it's just like everything else. It's brilliance of the basics first.
Right. Yeah. It's always starting with the fundamentals and kind of wield one block, move on to the next one, and just keep stacking up that.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
basically building a foundation of a house. You can't get there all right away.
Right. Yep.
So, what would you say is the biggest difference in hunting Illinois compared to Michigan? Like, what was the biggest thing that is just, it was unanimous, like it's way different in Illinois compared to Michigan, if there is a big difference?
Oh, no, there absolutely is, and I knew you were going to ask that. And hands down, the biggest aspect is just the sheer amount of less hunters. It's, I mean, I've got this piece of paper right in front of me, and I wrote it down because after Brett said this, and I was like, okay. I tell people this all the time, my friends and family, that that have never hunted down here or a less pressured state that are from Michigan. Let's see, there was, where is it? Okay, hunters. Okay, Illinois. Now, this is just stuff I just found on Google, so it's subjective, but it's probably pretty close. Last year, when I rounded up, there was 300,000 total hunters in the state of Illinois. There's 516,000 in Michigan. So just that alone, it's monumental. Yeah, there's some, regular gun season in Michigan, 85,000 bucks killed, 51,000 does. Gun season in Illinois, 77,000 total. That's like half,
Wow.
So the pressure is it's not even close to what you guys have to deal with. And to subject that even further is, as you guys know, most of the pressure in Michigan is the lower half of the Lower Peninsula.
Yes.
So it's even congregated even more.
Yeah.
Down here, it's pretty spread out. It is congregated, especially in central Illinois where I am, because, and no joke, so south of me, there about to the northern end of this public property, it's probably 25 to 30,000 acres total of public. That's including the 11,000 acre lake. So, probably 20,000 acres of huntable area. If you go northeast, southwest in any direction for 10 miles, it's just open fields. You might have a creek flat that runs through there or a 100 acre block of timber, but that's it. It's wide open here. So if you find those man-made reservoirs where we're surrounded by timber and agriculture, well, that's where the deer are. So it's automatically easier just to find the herds of deer to start off with. And then you still have to go through and break them down and, find their bedding areas and core areas and everything after that. But the biggest thing is just the sheer lack of pressure compared to up there. It's unbelievable. And
then that just results naturally in higher quality deer.
Yes, not more deer. I actually found this number too. So last year, the Michigan herd was estimated at about 2 million. As I couldn't find one recent, but as 2021 down here, it was 640,000. I know our herd has gone up a little bit, but still, that's a huge difference, right? That's 50% more, at least. So yeah, there's not near as many deer. And it's funny, I was actually thinking about that on the way here because we're in that time frame. I'm sure you guys have seen this. We're in Michigan, January, February, when it gets really cold, like dead of winter, late January, early February. There's sometimes you'll see a field full of 30, 40 does.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen that one time in 6 or 7 years, however long I've been down here, and it was maybe 15 or 20 deer. And only one time have I seen that. So the sheer number are less, but the quality is far better. Far better. It's unreal. And we can get into that later, and I can explain further on with that. So.
It seems like Illinois is one of those states where, it's gaining a reputation for having big bucks. I keep seeing big deer in Illinois.
And that's where I was going to, good point, because I was just like, Illinois is kind of like that up and rising state, in my opinion. That's like, they're producing big deer. So you saying the number of hunters down there is just, I wouldn't say low, but compared to Michigan. It seems like a lot of people are kind of flocking towards Illinois now compared to Iowa. Lee Lakowski just bought property down there in Illinois a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so there was I keep tabs on that, just Google searches. I don't get too deep into the weeds of it because I can't really help it that much, but I do keep tabs on it just to kind of know where we're at. So last year, Illinois was ranked the number 3 whitetail state in the country. And I believe that. It's, Iowa now, it's taken 6 points to draw South Central Iowa. It's a $700 tag. Kansas is now a draw, every other year, basically. Illinois is still the last, well, I shouldn't say the last one, but one of the last ones you can just hunt every year over the counter. Now, it's still a $500 tag, or it's like $485, $486, something like that, $500. So it's expensive, but you could still come, you guys could come down here next year and do
a state land.
Yep. Until they change it to where it's a draw for non-residents, you can get it over the counter. I've invited numerous friends. God, I don't know, 6 or 7 of my friends from back home have come down probably 3 or 4 years in a row, not all together, but throughout the last 3 or 4 years, 1 or 2 at a time. And they'll choke the $500 down and come down, and they'll have the time to see the biggest bucks of their life. And nobody has killed one yet. No, I take that back. My buddy Peter shot 2 this year. He tagged out. But every single one of my buddies has seen at least one or more 140-inch bucks. This is during archery season. And I think all of them but one have had an opportunity to draw their bow back on one, just for whatever reason. The shot didn't work out, or they missed, or whatever. I mean, and that's, a 4 to 10 day period of time they're down there. I mean, man, I remember hunting Michigan. You could go an entire season and maybe see 140. These guys are coming down here. Now, granted, I'm helping them because I live down here, and I'm, kind of guiding them, if you will, a little bit, telling them some areas to go. But the quality is just, it's unbelievable compared to, and I'm just comparing it to Michigan. So now let me back up even further. There was so when I started, it was 2016. Like I said, that was the year before the crossbows were even legalized. That 2016 year, put it this way. So I'll tell you a little deer story, and I'm not trying to brag, and I'll be brief with it. But there was a section of the public area that I had just found on the map. Actually, there's 2. I'll tell you about 2. There was one area on the very northern part of this lake. I call it the lake. I'm not going to tell you guys where it's at. Sorry, but
no, you're good.
I'll call it the lake. The very, very north section of the lake, there was a huge bluff, probably 50, 60 feet tall. I mean, I'm talking like a 50-degree angle. And then it sloped down into a creek flat, and the creek flat widened out. And then there was agriculture up on top here, and big CRP and switchgrass over there. So I went in there in the summer, and I put a camera in there. And this is before I had cell cameras. So I just hung a camera on the pinch point and left it. I said, I'll just see what happens. In the meantime, hunting season rolls around, so I start bouncing around to public and just trying to learn it, right? Because I couldn't really do a lot of summer scouting because it is so insanely thick down here in those river bottoms and those creek flats. You can't see. But I did locate this one area driving over a bridge, and I still hunt that area. And I just looked over the bridge, over the creek, and I'm like, that's buck bedding. There's no doubt in my mind. The creek winds off, and there's a point that comes into it, obviously, and there's dogwoods scattered around the edge, CRP, which then turns into autumn olive, which then turns into a hardwood flat, and there's ag on one side, and it drops off into the creek. So I'm like, that looks good. So I go down there, and my plan was to only stay in the creek for access, in and out, only coming in and out of the water, so there's no ground scent. And that's what I did. And I got up to where, using Onyx, where I climbed out of the creek the one time in my waders. And the creek is, ankle deep to waist deep. That's varying. So it's not like it's a river or anything. Easy to walk. And I come across a scrape, like 15 yards from the creek. I'm not shitting you. It was 3.5 feet in diameter and 3 or 4 inches deep. Just historic as hell. I mean, a big layover limb. I mean, just textbook. I'm like, holy shit. So I put a camera on that, and I go hike up that ridge just to the south of it, about 60 yards, and that thing's just lined with scrapes. And I find a pine tree like the size of a basketball, just absolutely shredded, coming out of a really thick area. I'm like, okay, this is the dominant buck area here, no doubt. So I put a camera on that scrape. I remembered that rub, walked my way back out, found another converging trails on another massive pile of scrapes, or rubs rather, put a camera there. And this was like middle 3rd week of October-ish. So long story short, I start picking that area apart on my days off, hunting it, and I'm seeing bucks, I'm seeing deer, and I start getting pictures of this really big 10-point. I'm thinking like, mid-40s, 150 class-ish, and it keeps working that scrape. But it's at nighttime, of course. There's no rut, no nothing. So November 8th, we had a good cold front come through, and we'll talk about this, but there's something to cold fronts that I will touch on later if you guys want. Cold front comes through, I sneak in there in the morning, walk past deer while I'm in the water, because what I do is I park my car next to the road, walk underneath the bridge, and then get in the creek, and then walk to my area where I wanted to go. And this is before I was using a saddle or even a mobile setup. I had a pre-hung set. I drop my waders, leave them in the creek basically, and then climb up and just try to slip up to my stand real quick. And November 8th, it was misty, rainy, and, lean my head back on the tree and just kind of dozing off, listening. All of a sudden the birds start chirping. So, okay, start paying attention. And it was like a half an hour later, this 2 bucks come off the ridge right away from that big scrape or that big rub. Start working down, and I pick the binos up, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, that's a big deer. And one of the biggest I'd ever seen at that time. This is the first year there. And he winds up crossing the creek, coming over to him, and I wound up shooting him at 32 yards. And then I wound up, the pictures are on Instagram, just a super heavy 10 point. He's actually a 14 point, but I don't count the kickers. He died like 100 yards after I shot him. Perfect shot. But it started misting and raining, so I got right after him, went and found him, took the pictures, dragged him through the creek because I was way back on public. So I wound up dropping him in the creek, dragging him out through the water and gutting him, stuffing him in my car, put a tape on him at home. He was 149 and 7 inches. And that's on public land my first year down there, never having, I didn't know anything, just strictly hunting sign. The next year I had 4 buddies come down, and we tore that area apart because I was like, this area is really good. I continued to see bucks in that area later season, some quality deer, some good 3.5 and 4.5 year olds. And then actually at the end of 2016, the very last day of the season, January 17th, I shot like a 146 8-point, just an absolute tank with my bow on one of those leases that's about 400 yards just across the road from it. And I think I got pictures of that deer too. But so I knew this area was super good, and there's just tons of bucks on. Well, that 2017 year, they legalized crossbows. There's people everywhere. Let me take that back. There was people everywhere during the first 2 weeks of November. So until that time period, November 1 to November 15th, I don't hardly see anybody. But once those 2 magic weeks kick in, then you start to see some people on public. And it has changed the dynamic of it a little bit of where I hunt on public, but them bucks are still there. I mean, I see big ones there every year, all over the public.
I have 2 questions off of that. One's kind of like a weird one, and then a main one. What's it like, kind of like, so you have your hunting area on the public land, and then you have someone come in, you see someone out there before you get out there to your quote unquote place that you're hunting out there. What's it like? Do you worry about that when you go home? Like, crap, someone might go out there tomorrow and beat me out there. Do you ever run into those type of situations on the public land?
Oh yeah, I have numerous times. I have a specific style, and I can explain it to you guys if you want it later. I have a style that, like I told you earlier, it dictates. It's all about the conditions. When I say conditions, I mean weather, temperature, barometric pressure, the moon phase, wind direction, air currents, time of season, as far as location I sit, or time of year, time of season. So I'm not one of those guys that goes out and hunts 80 times a year just to get out and grind it out. I hunt more like specific days, specific conditions, specific areas. So I don't run into it as much as I used to, now that I've kind of tailored my style, I guess, but I do still run into it. And so this is what I do. I of course go, shit, somebody's there, right? I'm like, damn it. Because I'll just tell you, if I'm there in that area, there's mature buck sign there. So that's why I'm there. Or a target buck, whatever it is. There's a target in that area, and that's why I'm there. Now, I'm going to hope, and this is honestly it, I hope that dude's maybe not as educated as I am, and maybe he just thinks it's a good spot, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick to my plan, and I'm going to basically stalk him, the other hunter, on my way in, and I'm going to try to find him. And what I mean by that is I'm going to, like that, that one area, I'm going to stay in the creek, and I'm not going to climb the mountains. I'm not going to climb the hills and look for him, crawl all over. I'm just going to go to where I normally hunt. And if I see him along the way, I'm going to try to dictate, okay, is he basically ruining this spot for me, for my plan? Or can I slip around him and use him to my advantage? Or can I slip around him and he's not going to bother me at all? Those are basically the three things that I think about. And that's just strictly a game time decision.
And if you think that it is going to interfere, have you ever turned around and hiked out?
Yep. I'll bounce out. And the reason for that is my experience is so not as much with a 3.5, 4.5-year-old deer, but when you get to the 5.5 or smart 4.5-year-old age class animals like I'm after right now, man, you really get one shot, maybe two. And especially when it comes to pressured land, I mean, they're only there because they feel safe. So if you get in there and you booger them up, they know where else to go. You know, it's a different game on the public than it is on private. So now, not to say that I might not go back to that area again, hoping that dude's not there. And if I do that, so let's just say that, yeah, I get to the spot, somebody's in there, I go my normal route that I already have planned, and I do wind up seeing him, and I do think that he's going to affect my hunt. At that time, I guess I'll make a decision, well, since I'm here, can I sit somewhere else just because I'm here? Maybe it turns into an observation sit. Or do I need to get out, and do I need to come back and hope that guy's not there? And now I need to probably do a little bit more scouting to see if this buck is still in this area or if he's vacated. And so that's kind of how I'll do it. I'll hope for a rainy day or a real windy day or something that covers my scent, where I'm being as least intrusive as possible. And you just hope for the best. If he's gone, hey, he's gone. That's just how it is. So
Right.
And then for the 2016 buck that you harvested, you said that you shot him out of a pre-hung stand that year.
Yeah.
So in Illinois, you can leave your stands on public.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a name tag, like affixed to the bottom of them.
Okay.
No screw-in steps or anything like that. But yeah, you can leave, climbing sticks in a tree stand in there. You can leave 20 of them out there if you want. But they're supposed to be down. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, you can't put them up prior to the first day of season, and then they're supposed to be down by the last day of season. Now, I can personally tell you, I could go walk around right now and find tree stands everywhere, but there are people that go around looking for them. It's part of the lake. So the lake that I hunt it's actually broken up into 3 different, I guess, classifications of land. Part of it's Army Corps of Engineer. Part of it is a creek establishment, and part of it's like the lake establishment. So the Army Corps of Engineer, I know for a fact, does have people that go out and look for tree stands, look for trash, ground blinds, blah, 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 things like that. So I personally have never run into them, but I do know.
Have you ever had anybody steal your shit?
Oh, yeah. I've lost 2 or 3 cell cameras. I had, not the stand that I killed that big buck out of, but the other stand that was like 150 yards adjacent to it. I went to there one day, same year, and had, strap-on sticks, like a ladder where you put the sections together. Mm-hmm. The bottom 2 sections were missing. I don't know where they were. So, yeah, I've definitely had stuff happen like that. So
a lazy criminal.
That's
like the worst one.
Yeah.
If you're going to steal it, steal the whole thing.
Don't
just steal what you can reach.
Yeah. Absolutely.
God damn.
That's part of what's got me into the mobile system, is so I can just carry everything in and out. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but that is definitely part of it. So, but the trail camera thing, I mean, damn, this year I had, I think, 4 on public, and every time I hang one, I kind of just hope it's there until the end of the season. That's all you can do. You can climb high and put them up, looking down, but I mean, everybody knows about that now. So it's just a crapshoot, Luckily, everyone that I use, they're all Reveal X, so they have the GPS on them. So, and everybody pretty much knows about that stuff now. So I think that kind of deters it. I don't know, but I'm sure I'll come up with some more missing someday. I'm sure it's not over, but.
Some people just get lazy and you catch them stealing it. And it's like, oh no, I thought that was mine. It was on my property. And I'm like, no, that's mine. Oh,
it's a dangerous thing to steal.
Stealing
from a killer. In the middle of the woods.
That's the thing.
A good place to have a confrontation.
In the middle of the woods, man. I mean, I think I'm a pretty honest guy, but I'm not going to lie. There's been times I've seen cameras and I'm like, man, I'd like to take that down. But then you just think, maybe the dude's 20 yards away behind a tree taking a piss watching me, and I just don't know, So it's just, that would be it. Yeah, the woods is a bad place to steal things that get caught, because you might have a gorilla come out and just beat the shit out of you while you're out there.
Yeah, and there's going to be nobody.
Nobody. Yeah.
All alone.
They might even kill you. Some people.
They could go that far. Yeah. Or some crazy dude with a knife. You never know. Yeah.
That's why my wife didn't want me to go back into the DNR world. I talked about it with her, and she's like, wait, so you can go out in the woods all by yourself and you have people that have actual guns? You knowingly know they have guns and they could kill you? Yeah, no, you're not going to do that.
And they're in cover, and they have optics, and they probably see you before you see them.
Oh, absolutely.
Jake, you mentioned you saw these spots on your electronic scouting OnX. What are you specifically looking for on OnX that's like, all right, I'm going to look for X. What are you looking on OnX that makes you like, you know what, that looks nice? And how are you using it to help you out there in the field?
So this goes to my style. Okay, I'm one of those guys that this is subjective, and this is just strictly my opinion. Brett, I was a canine guy in county. Well, you were there at county too. So it was before even I had the dog, but it was driven home even way more once I had a canine, and I saw how well those things operate with their nose. And a deer's just basically the same. In my opinion, and you guys might get some hate mail from this, but I don't care.
We don't either.
You will never beat a deer's nose. Flat out, I said what I said. Like, you can't do it. I don't care if it's carbon suits, sprays, you name whatever you want. I don't care. So
I've been saying that this entire freaking time.
I adopt that mindset, and I think, okay, can't beat it, so how am I going to use it? So what I do is I look for, first of all, I really, really, really like water. I want to hunt by water. Creeks, lakes, swamps, ponds, whatever. I
because
really
it
like
pulls your thermals.
That's a lot. That's part of it, yes. But let's just think about the whitetail for a second. Where do they really like to live? Swamps. They like to lay in the lowest areas they can. That's where all the thermal pulls drop, all the scent drops, and where's water? The lowest spots they can. So if you locate the lowest areas first, you're going to probably find deer there, especially if that area is adjacent to food, heavy cover, early season, acorns, late season, the last remaining food source. Again, it just all ties back into food. But I think even more so for that, and I had a very good mentor tell me this, and this guy is, you guys think I'm a big buck killer. That dude is light years ahead of me. And that's who I learned from. He told me one time, you can have the best 2,000 acres of deer land there is, but if you can't get into it and out of it without busting them, you're out of the game. And I took and ran that through my head, and I took it to heart. So if I look at an area and I say, okay, thick cover, maybe a ridge, some sort of topography that I think a buck's going to bed in, and I'm specifically talking about mature bucks here. There's younger age class bucks and does too, that they all bed differently. So let me say this right off the bat, and this is just an experience thing, but so you've got whitetail deer, and then you've got does, and then you've got younger bucks, and then you've got the mature age class bucks. And the mature age class buck, in my opinion, that term is relative to where you're hunting. Down here, a smart 4.5, 5.5-year-old or older, those are your mature bucks. Back home, Michigan, dude, you guys' 2.5s act like our 3.5s and 4.5s here, just because there's so much more pressure. Mm-hmm. So when I say mature buck, it's obviously relative to the state or area you're hunting for the pressure. So if I think a mature buck is going to bed in this topographical area that I like, there's something there that's going to hold him. The first thing I do is look at, how am I going to get there, and how am I going to get back out? That's the first thing I do. And water, I don't know if you've ever walked in a creek, a flowing creek. The perfect ones are like shin deep, a firm bottom. Dude, if you keep your feet in the water and you walk slow enough, you can be freaking silent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not silent, but you know what I mean? Like, I can't hear my own footsteps.
It'll just sound like the flowing water.
Yeah, that, and you've usually got a bank, like that area that I killed that big one on public. There's been so many times, I could tell you 5 or 6 more that I've killed on public and private that I've done the same thing, where the banks are maybe 8 or 10 feet tall. So I'm down in this bowl. The wind stays down there. The air current stays down there. So it's flowing with the water, or not necessarily flowing, but it's staying in the ditch I'm in. I'm in the ditch. They can't see me. They can't hear me. They can't smell me. I'm bulletproof. I'm bulletproof
basically.
Until I get to that spot where I'm like, okay, now I have to climb out. Well, once you get to the spot where you need to climb out, well, it's time to turn on like every ninja tiger mode aspect you can think of, just to get the 10 feet to the tree, or whatever, however far you got to go. So the biggest thing I look for is water, just because of entry and exit routes. And I think entry and exit is more important than where I think a buck might be bedded, or not just bedded, but his core area. And again, it just goes back to, if I can't get to him or get away from him when it's time for me to leave, then that's the one opportunity. You're going to blow it before you even get in there. So go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt, but what's it when you say core area? What are you looking at that makes you think that could be his core area? Like, describe what, when you're looking at on virtually and in the field, what are you looking at? Like trees? What makes you think that that's its core area?
Okay, so I'll just break it down like how let me get a drink here. So what I do is I look for basically hills. I look for highs and lows, high spots and low spots. Tops of ridges, tops of fingers, and then the draws in between the fingers, and then the creek beds as well, or river flats, creek flats, whatever you want to call them. And then I look for the thickest areas of cover. And that's what I look for on the map. And then when I see those, and so it's like throwing a big glob of paint at the wall and then making a painting out of that. You break it down once I actually get into that area, we'll call it. Okay. So, like that the 150 I killed, the 149 to 7/8 I killed there. I saw a big S bend in the creek, and I knew, okay, before the S bend and after the S bend, there's probably going to be crossings if they're crossing there. And I saw, over that bridge, I saw CRP with dogwood in it, which just screams buck. And then it goes into autumn olive, which is like a bush that's taller than I am, but like this, like you have to crawl through it. It's got the little red cherries on it.
Okay.
And then it turns into a hardwood ridge. So you have a hardwood ridge, which is all acorns, maples, soft maples, which they like to rub, acorns, which they like to eat, a creek flat running on both sides of that, super heavy, thick cover, CRP, which is cover, and then CRP at the end of that point with dogwoods on it, which they like to rub those too. And then so what I'll also do is I will look for, so this is going to be specifically to my style. I mentioned cold fronts earlier. So I take every piece of the elements I can get, and I try to use all of them to my advantage. The Drury brothers actually have their like Drury cast or whatever. Their deer cast, their deer forecast. That's exactly what I do. Exactly. I don't use that. I actually did the same thing, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I did the same thing prior to that, like going public. But I've checked, what I think is a good day against what they're saying is a good day for my area, and it's exactly the same thought process. So we can go way down the weeds with this. We probably should, but so I want, in a perfect world, I want a good moon phase where the gravitational pull is going to affect the animals, not just the deer, but the animals, and it's going to get them on their feet. It might only be 10 minutes before the closing light, but that's all I need, right? I want an obscure wind direction, so I don't want south, southwest, which is normal. I want northwest, northeast, which is generally coincides with a cold front, which means you have dropping temperatures, which is going to want to get them on their feet. You have usually some sort of precipitation with that, which keeps the ground scent low because the air is heavy. It makes everything wet. So I'm quiet getting in and out. I'm quieter getting up into the tree and then getting out of the tree. All that is.
Ooh.
Yeah. Can you
Sound
guys
like
still
what you
see
just
me?
said?
Oh. Can you? So all of that combined, and I'm trying to put all of those eggs in one basket. Or I'm sorry, I'm trying to maximize my time during those, glorious 10, 15 days a year where we get where all of that lines up. So that being said, Brett, to answer your question, let's break down cold fronts. Cold fronts are usually a northwest, northeast, east, southeast wind. I will look for, and mainly northwest, northeast, sometimes a straight west. I will look for an area that I think a buck is going to bed, specifically on those winds. And that bed or beds area is going to be completely different. It may be 50 yards away from where he's going to bed on a southwest wind, right? So that automatically bumps up my chances because I know he's only going to be there on those specific winds. So instead of having 75 days of south and hoping he's there 75 times, if we have only 15 north days, well, I've just narrowed it down to 15 days he probably will be there versus 75 days. So I will look for bedding locations and core areas that the wind direction basically is going to put them in these spots on that off wind. East is the best, in my opinion, because, like last year we had down here, I had probably maybe 4 east winds all year. So, and there's a theory to that, and this is regurgitated information, but when I heard it, I started paying attention to it. A direct east wind is so rare that mature bucks don't really have beds for that. So they're going to be on their feet a lot more.
Okay.
Maybe not hours more, but maybe 45 minutes more. Maybe it is an hour more during the day than every other wind, just because they don't know where to bed, because they don't have a good bed for that.
They're not used to it.
There was 2 years ago, and I regret saying this, but I shot probably a mid 150s 10 point, like 21, 22 inches wide, hit him right in the shoulder. I never wound up recovering the deer. I wound up kicking him out of a bed the next morning. It was my own damn fault. We had an east wind, like October 29th. I saw the buck come off from a west-facing slope, walk down into a bowl, rattled and grunted. He looked at me, no big deal. And the next day we had the same conditions. And I told my wife, I was like, I got a plan. And she knows when I say I got a plan, I'm more than likely, I shouldn't even say that, but usually I get a shot, put it that way.
Yeah.
It's happened more than one time. There's a bunch of bucks on the wall where I tell her, I got a plan for this one. And a lot of times it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. But I told her I got a plan, and I'm going to leave at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, I'm not expecting the shot until, half an hour before dark. And she's like, well, why are you leaving so early? I said, because it's going to take me an hour and a half to go the last 100 yards because I'm 75 yards from his bed. But he should be there because he was yesterday and the conditions are exactly the same. And he was. He textbook, read the script, 17 yards. I just smacked him right in the shoulder like an idiot. It was just my own damn fault. But and I've seen that east wind work so many times like that. It's just such a rare wind. So again, Brett, this is a long story, but go back to what you're asking me. How do I find those areas? I am looking for an area with spots in that area that on an off wind, a buck is going to be able to use his nose to his best advantage. And that's where he's going to want to bed during those off winds. Okay. So that's the e-scouting. After that, man, it's just boots on the ground. You got to go in and you got to find them. You got to hike around. You got to, you use your Onyx. I use Onyx, and you go, okay, I'm going to follow this ridge, and it's a soft maple ridge, and there's probably going to be rubs all up and down it. Okay, well, here's a heavy trail. Let's dive down this, or let's go up this. Where does it lead to? Oh, it goes into buckbrush, and oh man, there's a big lay down, and there's deer hair all over it, and there's a rub this big around, or there's 7 rubs right next to it. That's probably one of his beds. You just, after that, it's just boots on the ground and breaking it down. That's all after season scouting, of course. You can do it a little bit in season. That's a dangerous game to play, though, with those big boys, because they've got everything to their advantage, and that's why they're there. So I hope that answers your question. I know it's kind of long-winded, but
no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I like your style that you keep referring to. I like it. It makes sense. The only thing is it seems like you're focusing on the ideal conditions. So I know you've left law enforcement, but how many times have you ran into issues where you're like, today's like ideal, and then you can't fucking go?
Oh, it's happened.
Okay.
Let's just say I build up as much time as possible to take those days off. But yeah, no, it absolutely happens. There's days I've been in a squad car, just like beating my head against the steering wheel, wishing I was in the grease stick. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it even grinds your gears even more when you get a picture of them walking back there, and you're like, "Mother, oh,
Yeah.
you know."
Makes
But
you
yeah,
want to go back at Kmart, am I right?
yeah, like I'm about to start this pistol sitting next to me. So
Yep.
no, it happens.
Yeah. And you said that you're thinking about getting back into law enforcement?
Yeah, so I've applied to Illinois State Police. I was actually, so part of the plan when I moved back down here was to get with the U.S. Marshal Service, and it wound up happening. They hired me, but they wanted me to move to Fargo, North Dakota, and I just wasn't willing to uproot my family and move and everything. So plan B was the Illinois State Police, and it's looking really, really good so far. I'll just say that, because I'm not actually, I've got my conditional. I'll just say that. So a couple weeks here, we'll find out whether it's a go or no go. So.
Are
Heck yeah.
you going to be able to stay close to home?
Yeah, so actually, with Illinois State Police, they have what's called a fast track program. So they recognize, guys like myself with prior law enforcement experience, and generally speaking, prior law enforcement experience. You got guys like myself, and I'm 37, wife, 2 kids. Pretty much established with land, my house. So they recognize that, and for the most part, they pretty much let you go back to your district that you live in. So there are some occasions where you got to bounce out for a couple months, but then you can transfer right back. So
that's what I heard on one of the guys. I want to say I work with, but I work in the courthouse now for one of the counties that I'm here in, and one of the troopers there, he's trying to get me back into law enforcement as well, in what they're called the lateral program, because I still have a year left in my MCOS cert. So next March will be the end, and then it expires, and he's been trying to get me back to it. And I told him, like, well, I don't want to go and uproot my family because everything's here. Everything's around here for us set up perfectly. I don't want to move up to the UP or Detroit or Traverse City. They're like,
right.
no, they'll put you back right where you want. Even if you're first going into the academy, they'll put you back where you want to go, because they said they figured out if they send John Doe up to Traverse City, they're going to find their way back within a year back to their home county.
Yeah, absolutely, and that messes up their staffing and everything. And yeah, it's just easier to take the prior guys and just put them where they want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to interrupt your story that you were going on about you're walking through the water and you're coming up the hill, talking about in between, you're looking for water and in between food source.
Just again, it's all dependent on your geographic location. Whatever cover the deer where you are, whatever cover they want. Here, okay, by the lake, we'll talk about the public. If you find willows, which are usually coinciding with switchgrass, I don't even know if this is, kind of not necessarily cattail marshes, but that really tall brown grass, it's like chest high. I think it's switchgrass.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it grows in lowlands. When you find willows in that grass, that's the bucks around here really like that. They also really like the autumn olive I was talking about, because it's so thick. And then normal, briar patches, anything that's really thick that a big buck would want to lay in. But more specifically, the topography has to work for him. You could look at a ridge and go, oh my God, that's a perfect buck bedding area. But if the topography isn't quite right for him to be able to see and smell everything coming from behind him, he's not going to be there.
Are you seeing the bedding area kind of more for the big mature bucks on top of those ridges?
No, No. So there's a guy that have you guys ever heard of Dan Infalt? I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
Up in the UP.
Yeah. Okay.
Or isn't he Wisconsin?
Wisconsin. Yeah.
Yeah, the hunting
Wisconsin
beast.
now? I thought he was in the UP.
Well, maybe he moved. I don't know. But he
Is
was
it the hunting beast?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Dan Infalt. Okay,
Wisconsin.
so if you like, man, I got all this information from him as far as not all of it, but that's where my style started with as far as hunting buck bedding areas, because that's what he does, right? And then just from my own experience, this is I can tell you this, but I'll explain it to you this way, and it's really short and simple. So deer can see, smell, and hear, right? They need confirmation from their eyes, or of their eyes from their ears, to confirm that that's danger. I mean, how many times have you guys seen a deer look and their ears go whoop, forward, right? And then they're, doing the head bob thing, trying to figure it out. Or they hear something and then they look, and now they're both ears and they're looking, and then they're fixing them. And then what do they always try to do? They're licking their nose. They might start circling downwind, right? So they need ears and eyes both together to confirm what they think is danger. They always try to confirm it with their nose. If they smell you, they don't need confirmation from shit. That's it. Game over. So a deer's vision, from everything I've read, is about 300 degrees, right? So there's a 60-degree cone behind them that they can't see. And that's their most vulnerable spot. So you take let's just say a 5.5-year-old deer, big 150, he's been shot at, he's ran into every hunter out there on public land. He is going to put his most vulnerable spot in the most advantageous area for his strongest sense to protect it. That's his nose. So most of the time, and I've seen this go other ways, but I will honestly say 90% of the time, they will lay on just the backside of a ridge with the wind blowing over their back, just enough to where the wind starts to swirl in front of them. They'll get updrafts, they can smell it, and anything coming from behind them, it's going to go over their head, and it's going to start doing this eddy thing. It's just like a river coming behind a rock. It eddies like this, right? It does the same thing like this. And I've dropped milkweed just like Dan does, and I've seen it happen. And they'll just start catching all the wind behind them. So they're smelling everything coming from behind them, which is their most vulnerable area, but then they can see and hear everything out in front of them. So, Brett, I'll just tell you specifically what I'm talking about. So we'll go back to cold fronts. Let's just say north winds, right? Just keep it simple. North winds. I will look for southern facing slopes, okay, where the wind is going to come over the slope. I'm imagining them being on the backside of the wind-driven slope.
Okay.
An east wind. Well, no shit. Prime example, that buck I told you about that I shot in the shoulder, I told you that was a west-facing slope. That's on that lee side that I'm privy to hunt. That slope faces directly west, and it's directly to the east of it is all CRP, and it's flat. So that wind is just carrying and then just dumping right over his back. So that dude got up, faced into the wind, looked around, was like, yep, CRP's clean, and then walked the edge of that where there's creek right here next to him. He can see everything down here, and the CRP's, chest high, how high their head is, so it's about the same height. He can smell anything of danger from where he can't see, walking next to the edge of that CRP. So he's skirting the woods. If this is the creek and this is CRP, he's squirting right down the edge of it. He can smell all the CRP, and he can look right down in the creek for any type of danger. That's how a big buck acts, man. They put their nose to their biggest advantage. I mean, most deer do anyways, but big bucks absolutely do it. So I'm looking for the Dan says the leeward side of a slope. I'm looking for the downwind side of a slope, where the wind comes over the slope and starts doing this. As soon as this starts to curve over 10 feet, 15 feet, whatever the angle of the slope is, that's probably where you're going to find the most beds.
Where are you putting your stand in relation to all that?
That's situationally dependent. I'm going to try to, the best way to explain that is, okay, if he's bedded, let's just say you find a bed. We'll use an east wind because it's so rare. So it's pretty, if you do find an east bed your chances are really, really good of him being there. Okay. So let's say you find an east wind bed and he's there. Okay. So look north, look south, look west. Where's the food? That's where he's going to go in the evening. That's where he's going to go. Okay. Let's just say, well, let's use that buck that I shot in the shoulder. He was headed north. So he's going to walk down a little slope into a bowl where he's going to get all the scent. I know, just because I know the property, he's going to browse around down there next to the creek. There's all sorts of maple limbs and stuff that they chew on, grasses and whatever. And then 30 yards later, he's going to climb a little hill and he's right into an agriculture field. Well, he's going to go down there, and that's what they call a staging spot. And he's going to stage up there, and he's just going to mill around, get his browse, maybe get a drink, maybe make a rub, and then wait till, gray or dark, because he's a 5.5-year-old deer. He's not going to come out in the open until dark, right? So in that instance, once it's dark, he feels comfortable, boom, he's going to head out and then start eating on the natural or main food source. What I did is I set up about halfway in between. So I've set up about halfway to the north of him, or I'm sorry, halfway in between the main food source and his bed, and just in an ambush spot waiting for him to walk by. And that's exactly what happened. So I will, if I say, okay, he's bedded on that slope, there's food to the south, agriculture to the south, and let's say there's acorns to the south. He's going to go mill around on the acorns first, right, before he gets to the ag, cornfield, bean field, whatever it is. You got to find a spot in that path, and you got to try to ambush him there. And that's where it gets really tricky, because from everything I've seen, from what I've read, what Dan talks about, man, they may only move 100 yards before it's closing time and you can't see. So you as the human have to sneak in to that badass's spot and beat all of his senses, get up a tree, be quiet, and then hope he still walks by you on the path that you've picked.
What's it like using that knowledge when it comes to the rut?
It's gone. Don't even pick that.
Is someone refilling your beer?
No, so I'm at my wife. My wife and her,
I thought the thing was half gone already.
my wife and her family own a bar, and it's closed right now. But that's where I'm at. And I poured 2 before this because I didn't want to have to leave and go get another one.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
Nice.
It looked like a bar. My guess was that you had like a man cave set up in your basement.
That's what I thought for a second.
No, this is the bar, and the kids are at home and everything, and we're closed. And I was like, man, I'm gonna go there. It's perfect. There's nobody here. She can deal with the kids for a while. I'll drink a couple beers and talk deer hunting with some guys.
Hell yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your story.
No, you're fine.
I was like, wait a minute, what? No, but
so yeah, during the rut, it doesn't really work that well. Just because they're not there, man. They're God knows who where. God knows where. They're chasing does. They're locked down with does. Very rarely do I see them back in their, those specific beds that they're at. Just because they're out hunting. They're out doing their own searching.
So with that being said, is the rut not your favorite time to hunt?
Nope, it is not.
Pre-rut?
Yeah, my favorite is, my favorite's really October. Yeah, October, and then, probably October and the last 2 weeks of October. So it's kind of funny to say, the October lull that everybody talks about. Man, you give me the good moon phase and a cold front during the middle of October, I am out there. I'm game on. And I'll just, again, this is embarrassing to say, but last season I shot, it was October 17th, a legit 170-inch non-typical on October 17th, about an hour before daylight, cold front, set up on a scrape, knew of a buck bed, 75, 80 yards from it, called him out of it, shot him, didn't wind up finding him. Small fault. I hit low. I was pretty razzed because I've never seen a deer that big before. I've never had an opportunity at a deer that big before. And then 2 days later, October 19th, So let me back up. After I shot that deer, didn't find him, called in a dog the next morning. The dog and that handler blew him out of his bed. And when they blew him out, they said there was a giant with him.
I think I saw that video.
Yeah. I was ready to like swan dive out of my saddle when that happened. So 2 days later, we happened to have another cold front. So I got ballsy and I did a big loop, and I was going to hunt those buck beds that we bumped them out of. Well, 60, 70 yards from those beds, it was a different wind. That was a straight west wind. It was a north wind when I shot the first one. But it had switched to west, but the temps were still down, and it was still cold front as far as, misty, rainy. So I was walking through CRP, but I was super quiet because everything was laid down and whatever. It just took my time. 60, 70 yards from the bed we jumped him out of, this absolute mega mid 150s 10 point stands up in the CRP, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, that's a big deer. Same thing, called him over. There's another thing with calling I'll talk to you about down here if you want. Called him over, 26 yards. I just hit a limb on the way to him, missed him. I just didn't see the limb. Luckily, it just missed him. But that's 2 5.5-year-old deer within 2 days, back-to-back hunts, dead middle of October. So people that say it can't happen, no, it definitely absolutely can happen. But there's absolutely a style and a method to doing it, and it's very specific to where those deer are living.
It always seems like there always be a limb. It's always
it sucks, man. It sounds like
it was
you
that
didn't
big around,
sleep
and
very good for about a week.
It was like 10 feet in front of me. I remember, believe me, I can picture the shot. I took the shot, and it like arrow turned sideways, crashed into a tree, and stuck in underneath him. And I was like, "What in the how?" And then, I went and collected myself and contemplated suicide for a second, and then I climbed back up because I was like, "What the fuck happened?" I shoot good, and like, what happened? And then eventually, I wound up seeing the limb, and I drew back and recreated the shot and everything, and I was like, "Oh, okay, just didn't see that one." It is what it is. So, sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent there. So, no, the rut is absolutely not my favorite time to hunt. But yes, I do hunt it because, man, it's a lottery. You could have a 220-incher run by you. You just don't know. But my thought process going into the rut is my resident big bucks, and I say mine, the resident big bucks that I'm hunting prior to rut, I can pretty much bank on they're gone. They're not going to be in their beds. They're off chasing does. And then I absolutely just switch back to the quintessential hunt downwind of bedding areas, hunt downwind of funnels, doe bedding areas. Hunt downwind of funnels. I do a lot of in-season scouting, looking for new doe sign, looking for fresh buck sign, because that means there's a hot doe or was a hot doe in the area. If you walk through there and you're like, oh my God, this place is ripped up. Okay, well, why is it ripped up? Oh, there's really thick over there. That's probably doe bedding. There's a field over there. Okay, so we're downwind, all right, he's doing probably a J hook into it or something. I look for spots like that during the rut. So that's just textbook rut hunting right there.
Well, you're getting close to wrapping up the show. I'm curious, real quick. I have like a couple more questions. Is there anything else though that's like a difference between Illinois hunting and Michigan hunting?
Outside of the pressure.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I noticed for myself is when I was in Michigan, it took me 15 years. Now this is a culmination of things, just learning and being young and, having the access to the properties I had. It took me 15 years to kill a buck over 100 inches. But when I did, it was like that all new first, right? Like, yeah, got a big one. Okay, cool. So that buck acted so much different than all the other year and a half of I shot. And I've shot like 20 of them. I was very young, or very fortunate when I was young to have a nice piece of property, and I just stacked up small bucks when I was young, just getting experience and having fun. And then all of a sudden it was another big buck, and then another big buck, and then another big buck in the state of Michigan. But it's so difficult to learn those big buck characteristics and behaviors because there are so few of them in that state. And you are very limited on access as to be able to hunt that deer because there's hunters everywhere, right? Like knocking on doors is not a thing anymore. Everybody says, get out of here, right? When I moved down here, I mean, God, the first year, I shot that 149 and that 146 8-point, both with a bow in my first year. And then every year since then, it's just compounded more and more and more. I'm in an area, both public and private, where when I go out, because of my style that I've talked about, I'm confident enough in my style to know that I have a very good chance of seeing a quality buck. Maybe not a shot, maybe not an opportunity, but maybe just getting eyes on one. The confidence boost that gives an individual is massive. And on top of that, I get to watch the older age class and the more mature deer act like deer, like we read about in magazines. So I get to learn off from their behavior. And I'll tell you, like prime examples, last season, I set up on 4 different buck beds, the 2 that I shot and didn't recover, the 1 giant 8-point I shot November 5th, and then a massive 8-point that I didn't get an opportunity of like November 27th. I got into their core areas and I acted like a more dominant or like a dominant buck, and it pissed them off because they're the king, right? But I was able to see their characteristics and use it against them because I know that deer is probably in that area and I have access to it. So I was able to get in there, let out a big grunt, rattle just for 3 seconds. And that deer thinks, wait a minute, I'm the badass here. How did you get in here to my area without me even knowing? Because I think I've got it all. But he doesn't because I was able to slip in on him. So I guess what I'm trying to say is being able to watch and learn firsthand, see the actual animal, not just on a TV, but in real life, act like deer and see how they use the wind, see how they use the terrain, and see how they use their nose and other air currents. That's priceless knowledge. You don't get that in pressured states like Michigan just because you can't. A lot of times you just can't go to where the big buck lives. Down here has that opportunity to do that.
No, I'm 30 years old, been hunting since I was 12. I've been hunting on this one piece of land now.
I gotta move so I can plug my phone in.
Oh, you're good. I've been hunting now for maybe, I don't even know how many years. Last year was the first year where we saw more than one deer that averaged maybe 150. We saw maybe 5 or 6 of them. Preseason, we were all just like kids in a candy store, like, oh, I like that deer. I like that deer. I like that one. I want to go after this one. And there was one deer I saw in particular. My wife called him Geronimo. I had a picture of him 2 years ago. He was literally 2 inches away from my stand. And I was like, I want that deer. He was about 180. He was just solid round mass. All of a sudden, deer season comes around last year. They just all vanished.
Yep.
I'm like, what just happened? No one couldn't get a picture of them. No one's even seen them out in the field. No one's even like heard or anything. They just like disappeared. And we were showing the photos to the neighbors and like, have you seen this deer? No, not once. I don't know what you're talking about, but that deer. It was just astounding to me of how we
trust them. Your neighbor? Do you trust your neighbors?
I was gonna ask. Yeah.
Yeah, I trust my neighbor only because him and I have a mutual agreement of how we like to manage the deer between that property and his property. So he shares his deer with me, and I share the photos with him as well. So he shot one of the deer that we did see on camera. We called him Claws. But like I said, last year we were just like, couldn't believe that we saw so many deer of that caliber, and no one was getting photos of them. They just disappeared.
Yeah.
And you're right. I guess it's kind of a tangent, but it's hard to study and learn how mature bucks act here in Michigan because they're just so. You can't get a deer to get 3 years old. If you can see a deer at 4.5, that's like hitting the lottery.
Yeah.
So
see, down here, I was privy to shoot those 2 really not. Sorry, I'm trying to get my phone to balance here because I had to plug it in. I shot those 2 big deer the first year I was here, and I was just like, oh my God, right? But I'm still the redneck Michigan hunter, where the next year I killed like a 120 because I was like, just good deer, shoot it. And then, I wound up killing a 150-inch 8-point on public. But I had to, eventually it got to the point where, like, now I've stopped shooting 3.5-year-old deer. And I'm not bragging at all by any means. I just, on my own land and the leases I have that we can actually control, what deer are harvested, I've just seen it so many times where, on my property, I'll tell you about there was a super wide, very spindly, narrow 8-point, probably low 30s as a 3-year-old. And I was going to kill him. I wanted to kill him. But I tagged out that year. I've actually got video of him in December walking right by me at 14 yards. I was on the ground in my recurve, but I was tagged out and I didn't shoot him. He made it and came back as a 4.5. Massive, blew up, high 40s 8-point. And I'm like, that's that same buck. It took me a minute to realize. Hunted him that year, never got an opportunity at him. Came back as a 5.5-year-old. I'm talking probably 152, 153, 8-point, just a magazine-looking buck. And I've seen that just so many times on different bucks through different properties down here that, dude, I pass 3.5s every year because I know there's a 90% chance they're going to make it.
Yeah, it's realistic.
And it's not like that back where you guys are. And I completely understand that. I mean,
I feel like that has a lot to do with why so many young bucks are harvested here.
Absolutely.
Is because when we see one, we're like, oh, like I may not get another opportunity. Like I have to take this.
Yep, that's exactly it. I know people that, and there's another thing. A really close relation of mine. I'm not going to say who it is, but just by luck, gun season, shot like a mid 140s 11-point, just pure luck, just sit in the right place, right time. Deer, for whatever reason, ran by him. Shot him like 4 times. Wound up finally getting the deer. But he'd never shot 2 bucks in 1 year. So like 3 days later, he shoots a spike just to fill that second buck tag.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you? That is the problem right there. That's the problem. And his response was, I've never filled both buck tags. I was like, all right, dude, whatever. Congratulations. Hey, good for you. But like, oh my God. And we down here, we have 2 buck tags. There's been years, there was a 3-year stretch where I didn't fill them both. Just because I made that conscious decision to stop shooting 3.5s, and it was 4.5 or older. Now I'm on it's got to be a big 4.5 or 5.5 or older. Like the first buck I killed this year, I'm pretty sure he was 7 or 8. He was just so freaking massive, just huge rack. But I shot the 2 prior to that, which are 4.5 and 5.5, and then the other one I killed was just a managed 4-year-old. But I can count. I shouldn't say I could count. There are countless friends of mine that don't even look at 3.5s. Some of them don't even look at 4.5s. They're those big buck killers that, the guy I'm building a house with right now is one of my best friends down here. Probably is my best friend down here. He's got legit 180s on the wall. I think he's got 3 of them. He's only got maybe 10 racks throughout his life, but they're all 150 plus. I mean, that's what's down here is he's one of those, it's booner or nothing. And that's just a different mentality from back home where it's, oh man, a 100-inch 8-point, better shoot it. Might not see another one for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But here it's like, oh, that's just a 150. There's probably 3 of them in this section. It's just different.
And now I know for sure why Lee Lakowski bought property down there in Illinois. I said that in the last show. I'm going to say it again. I mean, it's
my stepbrother. He's a pretty big hunter, and him and his dad lease property in Illinois, and I've seen some pictures of the deer that they've harvested down there, and yeah, it's just freaks of nature. And then now that I'm getting kind of into this world and paying more attention to stuff, it sounds like Illinois just keeps popping up. Like it's one of those hot states for sure.
Dude, put it this way. So One of the reasons I bought my property is because now it's only 13 acres. I probably only have 8 of it huntable. But I got to know the neighbors around me, so, and we're all on good terms. If somebody shoots when it comes down to somebody else, let's just go get it. It's all good, no big deal. And we share photos, all like-minded, I guess, big buck, want to be big buck killers. We're not shooting little deer. Every single year that I've been here, well, let me put it this way. I've lived here 5 years. Yeah, this is my 5th year here. So I didn't hunt it the first year. I'm sorry, let me backtrack. Part of the reason we bought this is there's a big funnel on the west side of my house. And I'm talking like 50 yards from my house, 40 yards, whatever. It's probably 20 yards wide, but it connects the ag to the north of me, to the south of me. Then there's a huge CRP field behind me to the south of my property that my property butts up to. So I didn't hunt it the first year just because I hung cameras and I was like, I just want to see what's here. But it's so small, I'm like, I'm just going to stay out because I don't know how to hunt it. And that's where I started getting pictures of that 3.5-year-old that blew up into that massive 8-point. So didn't hunt the first year. So I hunted the second year. I missed probably 160 inch, and I can show you guys the video of it because I had a GoPro on. 160 inch 6x6 with double turkey feet, one on each main beam with my recurve at 21 yards. That was 80 yards behind my house. You want to talk about wanting to hang yourself with your bowstring? That was bad. That same year I missed with my recurve, like a mid 140s 9-point. The next year there was that huge 8-point plus there was another 12-point. He was a 10-point with both G2s had splits. Last year, I'm trying to remember what was last year. Oh, I'm sorry. 3 years ago, I shot a low mid 140s 11-point standing in my yard. I stalked him through my grass. I was standing in my grass when I killed him. Last year, I shot a really nice 8-point. And what else? Oh, yeah, a really nice 8-point. It was like 22 inches wide. That one's they're all on Instagram. You guys can go check them out. And again, that's not to count the 3.5-year-olds that I've passed that just come through my property. My property doesn't hold deer. It holds does. So the bucks are just back and forth through it. And my place doesn't heat up until, that 3rd week of October all the way through the rut. That's the only time I hunt it. I stay completely out of it until I start seeing rut activity. And then the last season, there was what I guessed a 140, 154, 155 inch 9-point that I had twice within bow range. Just couldn't make it happen. I mean, that's on 13 acres in Illinois, and that's a tiny little postage stamp, right? I mean, that's what's here. It's unreal.
I'm curious to see because sure you've heard of Jake of how Ohio is kind of like a good up and coming type of state where a lot of people want to go. I think it's like top 5.
I like Ohio.
I know you were down there, Dan.
I did 2 sits down there, and with me being so new to hunting and not experiencing a whole lot, it was still very obvious to me that it was way different.
Yeah.
My first sit, I had a fucking 10-point come right to me.
Yep.
A 10-point that I may never see a deer of that quality in Michigan.
Yeah. My 2015, I tagged out in Michigan on 2 really nice 8-points with my recurve. Went to Ohio, 4 hours in the first sit. I shot a nice 9-point on public land. It happens. It's just Michigan could be, in all honesty, in my opinion, it could be world class. Take Illinois. We obviously we grow big bucks. There's tons of them here, but there's a lot less hunters. But we don't have the 6, 7, 10 mile long cedar swamps and swamps like you guys do that are just really impassable, where those deer can go and hide and grow old. And the amount of timber that's there where a deer can hide versus here is way, way, way less. So you guys, if you went to a 1 buck rule for 2 years, you'd have giants everywhere. Not giants, but you'd have, that 140 inch up 8 class would be very prevalent. And there would be giants, few and far between, but they'd be there.
Yeah, I've been praying for a reform.
Yeah,
in Michigan.
I know. I was when we were there. We were, years ago. It was really starting to be a buzzword and a buzz topic, and I know it's only grown in hope since. So,
I know. I talked to Jared from Fair Chase, and he's a big advocate for the $1 rule, and I think a lot more. You're right, Jake. It's something growing more here in Michigan. I think that definitely needs to happen, only because Michigan. If you took a line basically from Grand Rapids all the way over, and you just south of it,
yeah,
that's where you're going to get, in my opinion, your mature, older tank type bucks. You go north of that, you're just going straight pines and timber, and
right.
and then the UP. I guess if you want to call it swampy up there in a sense, but
Yeah, there's the big cedar swamps and things. Yeah, but they
yeah,
don't have the food up there that they
no,
do.
they're
Like you're
not
talking
getting
about.
giant, but they're just getting old.
Yeah,
And you congregate this little piece of the mid-state, and you're throwing a bunch of hunters into this one little area. Yeah, everything's just going to be dropping like flies.
yeah.
Well, that's what I notice every time I go up north. Like as you're leaving Southwest Michigan, you're driving through all these cornfields, and you're seeing that everything is waist high at that time of year. And then you get up north, and the crops are, a foot high.
They're half. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like you can just tell that like the agriculture doesn't do as well up there, which
Right.
makes sense why they're in the southern part.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, Jake, was there a story that you never got to share tonight, or a conversation topic that you wanted to share before we close out the night?
Man, we could sit here for a whole 30 rack and 8
We're gonna
hours
have
if
to
we
have you
wanted
on
to,
again.
but-
Yeah, we're gonna have to have it back on again, because I feel like we're gonna have this whole no show again.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, there's countless, but sticking to the main topic of what you're talking about is the difference between Illinois and Michigan is hunting. Hey, I'm just Jake Gilbert, man. I mean, you guys can go on my Instagram, and I mean, you can see the bucks that I've shot down here, and I can tell you my progression as a hunter for me has skyrocketed. And it's almost, I mean, you can ask my wife, I almost end every season saying, God, that was my best season yet. Or, man, I learned a lot this season. And it just keeps happening because I have the advantage and the opportunity, man, to play around with these big deer. And, you can watch TV all you want, but until you actually get to be in the envelope of, a 4.5, 5.5, 8-year-old class deer, it's hard to experience what that is like. And I know where you guys are coming from, because, God, I remember as a kid, seeing one like one time a year, just randomly. I picked the right stand and he happened to be there, and it was like, oh my God, that's a big one. And it walks away, and you never see another one for maybe 2 years, So, I don't want everybody to think like, I'm the next Dan Infalt or Andy May or Lee Lukoski, but I've got a style. It works. I mean, yeah, there's tons of stories I could tell you. I guess if there's anything to take away from my style, it would be, think about what I said as far as trying to put all of the elements, and I'm gonna say weather elements together. And I definitely think, in my experience, it's more beneficial to hunt more pinpoint activity days versus bombarding it with trying to do 75, 80 sits and just hoping. I don't go out for a hope anymore. I very rarely do that. Now, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes there are times where the kids are driving me up a wall, my wife's up my ass, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm going hunting. I don't really care if I see shit tonight. I'm just leaving for a while.
Yeah.
Of course, that does happen. But when I'm in the game and I'm like, no, it's time to kill, it's very specific situations, specific conditions, and it has just absolutely driven up my success like exponentially. I could tell you countless times of, the first time in, the first sit in on public, and I've connected and I've killed one. one of my favorite ones. We call it the Boogie Buck. It was Marine Corps birthday, November 10th. It was public land, and I was actually late to my son's gender reveal because I was dealing with that buck, getting him out of the woods, all on public land. So, of course, I got that deer mounted, but that was my very first sit into that spot. Never even scouted it, other than e-scouting it. Brett, it was exactly like I said. I walked in on the river, and I kept checking creek crossings, cut a big track, climbed up out, early in the day, looked around, was like, I think they're going to go there. There's lots of signs, scrapes everywhere, climbed up right before dark, wham, got him. I mean, I don't know, like I said, we could go for hours on that style and kind of my process, if you will. But I don't know, man, just to go back to the Illinois versus Michigan thing. Hey, I feel for you guys. Fuck that state. I'm not coming back there. I have talked about coming back just to hunt with my boys that are still there, like my core, Tom,
Yep.
and our buddy Jimbo and our buddy Nick. We kind of like the four musketeers are running around together. But it's funny even saying that. I know that, like, I would absolutely come back for like a 4-day weekend, just more or less to drink beer and hunt and hang out with those guys, right? And don't get me wrong, I would be hunting hard. But I know that, like, if a 110 incher comes out, I'm probably going to smack it in the face just because that's probably going to be the best one around.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Where they come down here and, well, shit, I'll tell you, the first year Nick came down, we hunted my place, we hunted public, and we hunted that lease. We bounced around all over. He had an opportunity at that 6x6 that I missed with my recurve. He had, well, I shouldn't say he had. He saw a legit booner tending a doe. He drew back on like I don't know. He said it was a mid 140s 8-point, which if you think of a mid 140s 8-point, that's a massive 8-point. It takes a lot for an 8-point to break 140. A couple 120s, all that was within 5 days, 6 days maybe. It was 6 days maybe. I mean,
so he was just spoiled.
Oh God, he was flabbergasted. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. And I kept telling him, I was like, "That's what's down here, dude."
Well,
And I had done a ton of scouting. Anytime my friends come down, my core group of friends come down, they stay at the house, whatever. I just tell them, look, I'll do the scouting. You guys don't have time to come down here. I get it. I live here, so that's what I do. So I do it for them, and I try my best to put them on deer. And hey, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work out, but.
Hanging with the boys, it don't matter, man.
And that's the biggest part of it is, we're kicking it. But I tell them, I'm like, look, we're kicking it. We're drinking beer. We're doing guy shit. But keep your shit straight because you're going to see big deer. Whether or not you get an opportunity is different. But they're fucking here and they're everywhere, man. So, keep your shit watertight. And every one of them has been on one or, a couple of them have killed. My buddy Peter last year, he shot a 10-point that I was like, God damn it, I wish he wouldn't have shot that deer because it was 137 inches as a 3.5-year-old, 12-inch G2s, 10-inch G3s, and I was like, that'd have been a 150 next year. But I didn't say a word to him, just a congratulations and shook his hand. He was ecstatic, and that's good for him. But I don't know. I keep beating a dead horse, but man, that's what's down here. But it's also a $500 price tag. So
that's not as bad as some other places. And the biggest thing with us being Michiganders is Illinois is not far.
No, it's not.
So you're saving money in the overall trip because we're not traveling as far.
Yeah,
it sounds really doable. It's definitely.
Well, from where I live to Kalamazoo is on a good day 4.5 hours.
Yeah, I was about to say probably 5. I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, if you hit traffic, you're on 5 during I-80. But if you get it good and you're just zooming along, 4.5 hours.
So basically, it's like a trip up to Mackinac Bridge.
Yeah,
in a sense.
Yep.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, so I've got a friend coming down this year. So he works for a propane company. His family owns a propane company, so he can't really take off like a week in November because that's when they're booming, their business is cooking. So he's planning on me calling him saying in October saying, hey, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday we got a big cold front coming through. fly down. So he's going to fly down, hopefully 2-3 times, or however many times it takes, I guess. Or hopefully it's just one time and he smacks one, the first weekend down here. But so he's going to come down during a couple cold fronts and just hunt like that. So, it's doable. It's very, very doable.
Well, I think we have our in, Dan, of wanting to go down there to Illinois.
I mean, I'm still trying to cut my teeth and get a little confidence and get a little bit more established here in Michigan, probably before I go out of state. But if an opportunity presents itself, I'm probably not going to turn it down. But I still feel like I've got a lot of learning to do.
So let me tell you this, and you can take it or leave it. I don't usually offer advice that much anymore, just because people want it. They ask, hey, I'll give it to them. But I ran into too many situations where people get, I don't know, pissy because I say, hey, why don't you think about this, whatever. But one thing that, and this is going back to like Tom Irwin, I have no doubt he would probably tell you the same thing. For a guy like you, well, let me ask you this. How many years have you been hunting whitetail? Not archery, just altogether total.
2
years total?
2 seasons. Yeah.
2
like
seasons. Okay.
I shot my first deer when I was 16 with my best friend that I grew up with. His family they're big hunters. They took me out, and then I never went hunting again until I got my bow 2 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm pretty naive.
A word of advice, and this goes back to my childhood. So I grew up with 200 acres behind me where I lived. It wasn't ours, but it was a neighbor across the street. He was best friends with my stepdad. So I was extremely fortunate. I literally, if you guys ever came down to the house, I have one of the giant Rubbermaid totes filled with basket racks, 6 points, 8 points, just from when I was younger, just because I shot everything, right? And most of it was with a bow. I've only killed 2 gun bucks my entire life. The amount of experience you get from just stacking up deer with a bow is invaluable. From watching the animal's body language, from their approach to when you draw back, to during the shot, and then immediately on the impact of the shot, and then immediately, their reaction to the shot, whether you hit or miss, and then their reaction after they're running away, and then of course there's the blood trailing and the tracking and then the gutting and the whole damn process. If I were you, and I know it's kind of looked down upon to shoot smaller bucks right now, everybody wants the big buck, and I get it, myself, here I am talking about it too. I swear to God, still to this day, my wife 3 years ago said, I want to go deer hunting. And I said, what do you want to shoot? She goes, I just want to shoot a buck. And I looked at her, and she's going to use a gun. And I looked at her and I said, you're going to shoot the first buck that comes out. She goes, no, I want a big one. I was like, honey, it don't work like that. I said, you need to just shoot a deer first. Okay, well, because we're in Illinois, it happened to be 109 inches. Just because that's where we're at. But I put her on it, and I was like, shoot that buck. And she shot it. Great. 150-yard shot. It's a 160-yard shot. Smoked it, right? And she's like, oh, my God. I had no idea there was so much to it. I'm like, yeah, that's why I told you just to shoot a deer. If I could tell you anything, use Michigan to your advantage. You guys have a 3-4 to 1 doe to buck population. Dude, smack the shit out of does. 1, it's good meat. And 2, you're going to build up that experience. Dude, start dulling broadheads. Get them dead. You're going to learn so much more. That way, when you ever do come down to an area, let's just say here, and the opportunity to shoot that, 3.5 or older deer is far more likely to present itself, you might already have, however much experience built up. That is something I tell everybody. And if a new guy walked through the door right now and was like, teach me how to hunt, I would still say that right now. Shoot every deer you see until you hit the point where you say, okay, I'm ready to move on to older deer, bigger deer, whatever. Just shoot what makes you happy right now.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I have been doing. I do have a couple of hunting mentors that I value their advice, and one of my other ones, he's a big buck killing son of a bitch. He pretty much told me, he was like, dude, he said, do not hold out for these unrealistic deer.
No,
He said that's like a virgin who is passing up pussy and expects to get, you know, the woman of a lifetime. He said,
Yeah.
you get out there and you fuck everything. And he
I want to
said,
get my water.
and I really took it to heart though. And I've killed 3 deer so far. I killed a doe and a buck my first year, and then this season I shot another buck, a 3-point. But it was awesome. I'm just gonna keep killing until I get bored, and then that's when I'll try to take it to the next level and really push myself.
Yeah, that's what happened with me. I remember the buck. It was 2011 or maybe 10 or 11. I was on, it was around, not Leslie, Mason. It was north, well, no, it was north of Mason. I don't know. Regardless, I called this place the Lansing property. It was right on 127. Regardless, and I shot this 4-point with like a little kicker off his base. And he looked like a big body deer, so I just shot it. It was 42 yards. I smoked him. You know, he runs 100 yards and dies. And I walked up onto it. And, dude, like, it hurt my heart. I felt so fucking bad that I killed that deer. And I was like, it stuck with me so bad. And that was it. I was done. I'm like, no more of this shit. And I said, from now on, it's 100 inches, 2.5 or older. And I went 3 years without a buck in Michigan until I finally killed that 104-incher I told you. And after that, it was off to the races. But, you know, you'll find your point where it's just like, okay, that's enough. Time to move on to, you know, and here I am saying I don't shoot 3.5-year-olds anymore, you know. And I really even got a 4.5. I'm like, it's got to be a good one for me to do it, you know. You'll get there.
Yeah, we got plenty of does. That's part of my plan, is to really put a hurting on the does, because it's going to help the state too. Like,
I was just going to say that. Yes, you're going to help the buck-to-doe ratio. Yeah.
Yeah, they're asking for help.
Yeah.
Hashtag let's make shooting does great again.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. You should put that on a T-shirt.
I think you should.
I bet they have them.
Probably.
We're
I'm sure
going to have to get one of those.
Yeah.
Real quick though, Jake, did you get in trouble by your wife for being late to your gender reveal party?
No. We were actually here at the bar, so everybody was good and tuned up.
Hell yeah.
And I pretty much was like, listen, I don't want to hear it. I'm here. Let's do this.
And it's like, here's the reason why.
Yeah.
A very valid reason.
I was like, there's a buck in your driveway or in your garage, and let's get after it. So,
yeah.
Well, Dan, did you have any final questions for Jake?
I didn't really have any questions, except for anybody who's not familiar with your Instagram. Could you share with our listeners where they could find out more information about you if they want to check out your content?
Yeah, sure. So, man, I'll tell you right now, there's not a lot going on, which is unfortunate. I want to get it built back up again. I was doing good there for a while, and of course during deer season, it's popping a lot. I want to take it to do a different direction. I just haven't been able to do it yet. Part of it's me, part of it's just time. But it's therapy at 20 yards. It's TA20 YDS. Where I'm on Facebook too, but it's pretty much the same content. So, but man, it's just, I don't know. I just had this intuition. There's actually a story behind the name. But it's just me and some of my friends that are, what I would call good deer killers, just trying to share information, make some good content, just trying to make a name for myself, just like everybody else is, just like you guys are doing, hopefully this police thing goes through and I'm not working 7 days a week anymore, being a contractor, and I can get my own podcast rolling. That'd be pretty slick. But I guess a lot of it is it's just doing this, man. It's just recreating experiences, meeting new people, because as you guys I'm sure know of right now, but the deer hunting world is shrinking, and that's not good. for conservation, for the money, for the future of it, you know. And I definitely want to keep hunting until I can, and I want my boy to keep hunting until he can't, as long as he gets into it. So it's just trying to meet new people, spread, you know, hopefully help guys like you out, you know. And it's
that's how I was gonna tell you that next. I really feel like I learned quite a bit tonight. Several things that I think I'm going to apply into my strategy this year that I think are going to help me. Specifically, you're talking about the water and how you really like to stay close to the water, and how you focus on a safe way in and out before you even dive into an area. That really stuck with me as well. Like, those are definitely things. And then all your advice on the wind direction, all that stuff made sense. The way that you explained it, very helpful. So I thank you for that.
And not to jump in there real quick, but I kind of want to. Jake, I think kind of knowing you, though, being in the law enforcement world, the attention to detail, and that's one thing that's big to me, is paying to details out in the hunting world. I think that's one thing, learning, talking to you, that's one thing that you pay attention to the most as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so there's and I know you guys are probably trying to cut off, but there's an analogy, and this is how I use it. So, but I told you earlier, when you go after that mature buck, and again, it's relative to wherever you're at, 2.5, 5.5, whatever. In my experience, and I mean, guys like Dan Infalt, Lee Lukoski, any of those big name guys at Drury Bars, they'll tell you, you know, you really get one shot, maybe two, on that specific animal outside the rut. But if you blow him up out of his bed, you know, or his core area, he's going to booger out. And here's why. I love telling this analogy because I can't wait to see your expressions. But so let's think of it like this. So you guys have your house, your property, wherever you live. And wherever you live, it doesn't matter. But you have whatever is yours, right? Okay, so do either one of you guys smoke? Like cigarettes?
No.
No. Okay, so let's say you come home from work, you get the mail out of your mailbox, and there's a cigarette inside your mailbox. Or a cigarette butt inside your mailbox. Well, first thing you're going to think is, what the fuck, right?
Yep.
But not a big deal. Weird, yes, but okay, what's that, right? Probably won't think too much about it. You come home the next day, there's a cigarette butt in front of your front door. Now you're thinking, whoa, what the fuck, right? First of all, who's been here? What is this going on, right?
Yeah.
The next day you come home, there's a cigarette butt laying on your pillow. How freaked out are you then? Right? You're probably grabbing your pistol, you're clearing your house, you're like, lock the wife and kids
setting
up.
cameras.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same thing, same analogy that a big buck does, man. His world lives around survival, food, and breeding. I venture to say 80% of it is survival. So if you can't get from your car, truck, whatever, to an area where you might be able to apprehend him without him figuring out, dude, you're just slapping him on the ass and saying, let's go, game on. You're telling him, I'm after you, right? So, I mean, how much, if you think of it like that, that is everything to them. That's their world. All they want to do is survive so they can eat, and survive so they can breed, right? So that's the only two ways you can kill them, is because of their food and their breeding. So if you keep going in there and you bump them and you leave in scent and they wind bump you, they catch your scent because you're set up wrong, or they cut your track, you know, from you going to set up in the tree stand, and they're going to their food and they smell it, and that's in their core area. Well, they're only there because they think that's safe, because it is safe. That's why they're there. So if you start leaving scent a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer, all of a sudden you're in their core area, dude. They're gone. They're out. They might give you that second opportunity. After the second time, it's done. Game up, over. So I guess that's to go to your attention to detail thing. That's why I pay such close attention to it. One of my mentors told me that, and I was like, oh my God, you are totally right.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm
going to keep that now and put that in my tactical toolbox.
Yeah. I mean, there's times where Man, there's been, I don't know how many times where I've either walked in a creek or been creeping along or something, and I see what I think is a big buck area, but it's kind of sparse. Like, I'm pretty sure that's a good area, but I don't know if I can get to that area to hunt it, and there might be one in there. I probably won't even go to it. I'll just back off, and I might turn that adventure, that hunt, I might turn that into an observation set, and then maybe next time on a different wind, I might come at it 180 degrees different. But I'm very, very careful about how I actually approach the kill shot for that area, or the kill location for that area. And I don't do it until, I will not go in there until it is in my mind. I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure, I think, because nothing's guaranteed against a big buck, but I'm pretty sure I got his number. If I'm like, I don't know, I probably just won't go into it. I'll probably just sit back and learn, and maybe catch him, slipping out. We're going, oh shit, why'd he go that way? Or, oh, why'd he go that way? Or maybe he just stands up and stands there for 10 minutes, and I'm like, what is he doing? What is he smelling? He's taking in all this information? What is he getting right now? I'll try to be figuring him out before I actually dive into it. So yeah, I mean, just to kind of go back on what you're saying, it's man, there's so much detail, and you got to pay attention to it. When you get on those older class animals, like, it's just so specific, man. To hunt them in that style, it's very specific.
Yeah. Well, I know we got to be taking a trip to Illinois soon. I know that's for sure. I know I will be.
Well, I mean, it seems like a hot spot to go for sure, and a doable, realistic trip. 4-hour drive ain't shit.
No.
Yeah. So if you guys, I offer this up to anybody that I talk to. I'll be honest, I'm not going to give you my spots, but a half an hour to the north of me is about 20,000 acres of public. Half an hour to the south of me is that 30,000 acres to the public. Man, I'll help you out as much as I can. I can, help find you places to stay, or, if you guys can send me maps and I dive into them with you. You got a bow shop, you can come to the house. God forbid something happen. I mean, anybody that's, I consider a friend of mine, I'll help them out as much as I can. In my mind, it's public land, first of all. Who am I to tell you, you can't hunt my spot? I'm not going to give it to you, but if you wind up there, I'll say, well, that's a good one.
You got a good eye.
You got a good one. Be careful.
Good one, right?
Hey, I would come at it like this and watch that way, But yeah, if you guys venture down here, if you want to ask, I'll help you out as much as I can.
Well, we got your number, that's for sure.
Yeah. And thanks again for coming on, man.
Yeah.
Best of luck.
Me,
Absolutely. We'll definitely have to have you on again. And when I see Tom in the spring to get my bow tuned, I'll bring you up and let him know that it's a small world and that we had you on. And then, hopefully everything works out with the MSP, or sorry, not MSP.
It's all right.
ISP.
Yep.
And yeah, man, good luck on your hunting season.
Yeah, thanks. You guys too. I'll be. I got a new bow. I'm tweaking, then tuning that all in, and a few properties. I'm going to try to knock on some doors, and then there's an area of public land down here that we had probably 170 incher 4 or 5 times on camera 2 years ago. And then last year, a couple of really, really big ones on. I'm going to be diving into that hard this year, trying to break it down, see what happens.
Oh, nice.
That's exciting.
Yeah. I'm hoping to hear back from you on that, see how that goes with you.
Yeah, we got a little ways to get there, but we'll see. So.
Well, Jake, won't take up much any more of your time. Thanks again for coming on the show and talking hunting with us. We really do appreciate it, and we'll definitely stay in touch, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks again for having me. It's an honor. Thank you.
Absolutely, man.
Have a good one.
All right, you too. Take care.
Yep. Hell yeah.
I think
that was a good show. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. It's just a wealth of knowledge. And like I said, attention to detail. I think coming from law enforcement experience, you could definitely tell he's taken that into his hunting.
The biggest thing for me, like as a student, I don't learn that fast. It really depends on the teacher and the way that they explain things as to how quickly I retain it.
Yeah.
And the thing that I really enjoyed about Jake is the way that he explained everything. I retained it all. So whenever I meet
down very well.
Whenever I meet people like that I retain their stuff easily, those tend to be the people that if they have content, I'm going through their entire catalog and I'm trying to learn more. So definitely we'll be having Jake back on here.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
And then maybe once he gets his podcast, we can do one with him.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
But yeah, man, it's been a good week so far.
Nope.
But
well, that will conclude. Wait, hang on. Well,
yep.
It's that time to end the show.
Mr. Bovin. Yep.
If you feel free and you want to be a guest on the show, message us on our social media platforms, or you can text 269-993-3653. Or just reach out to us. We do a show Monday through Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our live show. You can find our previous.
Subscribe.
Yep. You can find our past shows on our social media, as well as Apple Podcasts, Podbean, iHeart, Amazon, yada, yada, yada. But with that being said, Dan, I think, are you ready to take out for the night?
Oh, yeah. I'm ready for a little shut-eye. Or at least.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Whitetail Advantage Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.